I hadn't seen my sister in almost 2 years. Not since the night we fought in Mom's kitchen, words sharp enough to cut fruit, silence that followed heavy enough to bruise. It wasn't even a dramatic fight. Just the kind where everything that's been unsaid for decades comes rushing out all at once, and no one knows what to do with the wreckage. But when I saw the wedding announcement on Instagram, the soft focus photo of Lauren in her perfectly symmetrical engagement ring, captioned "Can't wait to say yes forever," my heart did something I couldn't explain. I didn't like the post. I didn't comment. I just stared at it, over and over again. Like it was some window into a life I used to know. A life I'd been quietly erased from. When the actual invitation came, months later, printed on textured ivory cardstock, addressed with my name and the kind of cursive that looked computer-generated, I stared at that too. And then, against every piece of advice I gave myself, I booked the flight. It was my last paycheck from the coffee shop. I hadn't told Mom I'd quit. She still thought I was working double shifts, saving for something real. The truth was, I was exhausted. Emotionally, physically, spiritually. Living in a one-bedroom studio in Cleveland that smelled like mothballs and missed opportunities. Scraping by on expired granola bars and hope. But when I saw that invitation, something inside me whispered, "Go." I wanted to believe this was a turning point. That showing up might matter. That maybe Lauren had softened, or grown, or, I don't know, remembered we used to braid each other's hair during thunderstorms. I wore my nicest dress on the plane. It wasn't fancy, just a long navy blue wrap dress I'd thrifted in college. It still fit, which felt like a small win. I'd done my makeup in the airport bathroom. Spritzed my wrists with perfume I'd bought back when I still believed I was dating the one. I even borrowed a pair of earrings from my roommate, simple gold hoops. Elegant enough to say, "I'm trying." The venue was stunning. Like, Pinterest board stunning. Fairy lights curled around trees, soft classical music drifting from hidden speakers, champagne flutes already lined up on silver trays. It smelled like roses and something more expensive, something floral and complicated I couldn't name. People were everywhere, dressed in pastel and pressed linen, talking in the polite way people do when they're waiting for something important to start. No one noticed me walk in. I paused at the edge of the courtyard, my heels sinking slightly into the grass. I felt out of place instantly, like I was walking into a scene I wasn't cast in. Everyone looked settled. Whole. And I was just the glitch in the picture. The smudge. Aunt Dana spotted me first. She blinked like she couldn't quite recognize me, then smoothed the surprise off her face and replaced it with a brittle smile. "Julia," she said, pulling me in for a side hug that smelled like strong perfume and unspoken judgment. "You made it." "Yeah," I said, trying to smile back. "Surprise." Her eyes flicked over my dress, my shoes, my hair, the quiet assessment people make when they don't know how to hide their disappointment. "Lauren didn't say you were coming." I wanted to keep it a surprise. "Well," she said, voice a little too high, "won't she be thrilled?" The sarcasm sat under her words like a hidden blade. I wandered inside, following signs toward the reception hall. The place was a dream, all blush tones and floating candles, with tables dressed in white and gold. I tried not to compare it to my last birthday, which I spent alone with a frozen pizza and a rerun of New Girl. I walked past the guest book, the photo booth, the table of personalized favors. And then I found it, the seating chart. My name was there. Julia Bennett. Table 9. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Until I walked to table 9 and saw what surrounded it: sippy cups, juice boxes, high chairs. Crayons in mason jars. Chicken fingers. I looked at the place cards. Maddie, 9. Caleb, 7. Hudson, 5. And then, Julia. It was the kids' table. My seat, a folding chair slightly too short, placed in between a sticky booster seat and a bucket of goldfish crackers, was unmistakably mine. I stared at it for a long time, not moving, trying to understand. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the real place card had been misplaced. Maybe this was some joke I didn't get. I looked around. No one was laughing. I sat down because I didn't know what else to do. Maddie offered me a crayon. "Do you want to draw a unicorn?" she asked. I wanted to cry. But I smiled. Sure. I was halfway through drawing a very sad unicorn when I realized I needed to get away for a second. I excused myself and followed a hallway toward the restrooms. The walls were covered in black and white wedding photos, not of Lauren, but vintage shots of other couples who'd married at the venue. Everyone looked happy. Everyone looked like they belonged. I turned a corner and paused. I wasn't sure if I'd taken the wrong turn, but then I heard her voice. "Lauren." I stopped walking. I don't know why I didn't move. I should have kept going, should have respected the closed door. But her voice, sharp, clear, froze me in place. I mean, obviously I had to invite her, she was saying. If I didn't, it would look horrible. People would wonder. The internet's brutal. Someone laughed, probably one of her bridesmaids. "She's family," Lauren continued, "but, barely. She always makes things about her." I just didn't want the drama. This was the easiest way. Another voice chimed in. "Did she even RSVP?" "I don't know. I figured she wouldn't show up anyway." And then the laugh again. That light, dismissive sound, the kind Lauren used to make in middle school when she was trying to impress her cooler friends. I backed away slowly. My heart felt like it was beating in my ears. I found the restroom, sat in the stall with my hands shaking, and tried to breathe. She didn't want me there. Not really. I was a placeholder. A prop for her perfect image. I wasn't invited because I was loved. I was invited because I was necessary. And suddenly, the kids' table made a horrible kind of sense. I flushed the toilet just to mask the sound of my breath. Washed my hands even though they weren't dirty. Looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the girl looking back. She looked tired. Like she'd been hoping too hard for too long. I walked back toward the reception. Everyone was laughing. Toasting. Smiling for pictures. And me? I sat back down beside Maddie, picked up a crayon, and kept drawing. This time, it was a dragon. It felt more honest. Because unicorns don't exist. I didn't confront her. I wanted to, God, I wanted to. My fingers itched to rip the door open, to step into the room and demand to know how she could talk about me like that. But I didn't. I stood there, spine straight, hands balled into fists at my sides, and then I just walked away. Past the dressing room, past the soft music playing from hidden speakers, past the floral arrangements that probably cost more than my last rent payment. The reception was in full swing now. I slid back into the room like a shadow, unnoticed and unchanged. The energy was rising, laughter layered over music, clinking glasses, people lining up at the buffet. I looked for my table again, the one with the crayons and coloring books and chicken nuggets in little plastic trays. My name card had fallen on the floor. Someone had stepped on it. I picked it up and tucked it into my purse without thinking. I tried to make myself useful, to look busy enough not to draw attention, but not so idle that someone would feel sorry for me. I wandered toward the drinks table and poured myself a cup of lemon water. One of the waitstaff gave me a side glance but didn't say anything. I wasn't sure if I belonged in that corner, but I didn't care anymore. Someone brushed past me. I think it was one of Lauren's college friends. Her perfume was sharp, citrusy. She didn't look at me, didn't even seem to notice she'd nearly knocked the cup out of my hand. I was halfway through sipping when Aunt Dana appeared at my elbow. "Oh good," she said brightly, like she was trying very hard to sound impressed. "You found something to wear. That dress is unique." I swallowed. "Thanks. I thought so too." She gave me that thin smile, the kind you give when someone's child shows you an ugly drawing and you have to pretend it's lovely. "I suppose Lauren didn't expect you to come. I mean, with your schedule and everything." "Everything?" "You know," she said, flicking her fingers vaguely, "your artistic journey. Must be hard to get time off when you don't really work." I blinked. She reached out, tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. "But I'm glad you're here. It shows character. And family's important, even when we don't always agree, right?" I didn't answer. She didn't wait. As she floated off, I found myself watching Lauren from across the room. She was glowing, effortlessly, unapologetically. Her dress sparkled every time she moved. People leaned into her, laughed with her, toasted her. The entire reception orbited her like a well-rehearsed solar system. She knew where to look, how to pose, how to angle her face just right for every photo. And she looked happy. Not fake happy, not the smile for the camera type of joy. She looked genuinely radiant, like she was exactly where she belonged, surrounded by people who adored her. I wasn't angry about that. I just didn't understand how we came from the same place. We used to share a room, twin beds, one wall covered in posters of boy bands, the other with fairy lights and hand-drawn constellations. I used to sit cross-legged on the floor while she braided my hair and told me about the boy she liked in her math class. She was bossy and brilliant and always a little too loud, but she was mine. My sister. My favorite person. And now, here we were. She, the center of a world I could no longer enter. Me, floating outside of it like a balloon someone forgot to tie down. A little boy with orange juice came racing around the corner, giggling. He bumped into me hard, and the juice sloshed across the front of my dress, sticky, cold, bright. "Oh," I gasped, stepping back instinctively. The boy blinked up at me and then darted off. I looked down. A wide yellow stain bloomed across the fabric. I reached for napkins. There were none. No one offered any. A woman walking past glanced at me, at the mess, and then looked away quickly, as if witnessing something too awkward to acknowledge. I stood there, alone in the middle of the reception hall, dabbing uselessly at the stain with the hem of my cardigan. No one helped. No one said a word. Eventually, I retreated to the corner, pulled my phone from my purse, and just stared at the screen, pretending to be busy. That's when I saw the notification. A message request. From a number I didn't have saved. Is she still sitting with the kids? Then another, quickly after. OMG, Lauren is too nice. I wouldn't have invited her at all. And finally. Bet she's crying in a bathroom somewhere, lol. Always the drama. I stared at the messages for a long time, feeling something cold bloom in my chest. I didn't reply. Didn't screenshot. Didn't even click to see who sent them. I just hit delete. My throat burned. I got up and walked to the patio. The air was crisp and sharp and real in a way the room inside wasn't. I leaned against the railing and looked up at the sky. The stars were faint, blurred by city light, but still there. Still shining. I thought of the last time Lauren and I fought. Not the one that ended our talking streak. The one before that. It was summer. I was living in a tiny apartment above a hardware store, painting canvases that never dried right. She came to visit, unannounced, and spent the whole afternoon telling me I was wasting my potential. That I was embarrassing Mom. That it was time to give up on being special and settle into something real. I'd told her to leave. She did. No apology. No follow-up. Just silence. And then, months later, an invitation to her wedding. I didn't cry then. I don't think I ever really did. Because when someone forgets who you are long enough, it's hard to remember yourself in their absence. But now, standing alone in a dress stained with juice, the laughter inside distant and muffled, I felt it, the ache of being erased not by accident, but on purpose. Not forgotten. Excluded. And I finally let myself feel what I'd been holding in. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just the deep, quiet grief of knowing you no longer fit in a story that once had your name written all over it. The room dimmed slightly as the DJ faded the music and someone tapped his spoon against a glass. It was time for the speeches. I hadn't been asked to say anything. Not even a quick, "Hey, want to share a memory?" There had been no text, no check-in, no invitation to reflect on a childhood I thought we both lived through. I watched as Lauren's maid of honor, her college roommate, Jenna, with the glossy curls and perfect posture, took the mic. She beamed like she was about to introduce the president. "If you know Lauren," Jenna began, "you know she's the glue. The one who holds everyone together. Even when things get messy, or people drift away, she's the one who brings us back. She makes hard choices look graceful, and love look easy." Everyone clapped. I didn't. I couldn't. Because I knew the version of Lauren who cut people off mid-sentence when the topic didn't flatter her. The Lauren who told me, flat out, that my life made Mom embarrassed. The Lauren who once skipped my college art show because her boyfriend had a sinus infection and she couldn't risk getting sick. And still, I sat there, pretending I wasn't coming apart thread by thread. At some point, someone must have noticed the stain on my dress because a distant cousin asked, "Did one of the kids get you?" I nodded. She didn't wait for an answer before drifting back to the mimosa bar. I stood up, murmured something about needing air, and headed toward the back hallway. My heart had started to do that thing again, the quiet racing, the internal sprint while the world moved in slow motion. I found a single-stall bathroom tucked between the kitchen and coat check. Locked the door. Sat down on the edge of the sink. Breathe. 4 seconds in. 4 seconds out. That's what the therapist I couldn't afford anymore had taught me. In. Out. It didn't help much, but it gave me something to do besides cry. I stared at myself in the mirror. My mascara had started to smudge. My lipstick had faded at the corners. I looked tired. Not just physically, but soul tired. Like someone who'd hoped too many times and was finally out of chances. When I stepped out of the bathroom, the hallway was empty. Except voices. 2 groomsmen, laughing quietly behind a half-closed door. One of them I recognized as Andrew, Lauren's husband's brother. The other I didn't know. Their jackets were off, ties loosened, feet up on a table. "Did you see the sister?" the stranger asked. Andrew snorted. "Oh yeah. Julia? She looks like she walked out of a poetry club in 2012. She's sitting with the kids," the other one said. "Is she slow or something?" Andrew laughed. "Nah, just the artsy one. Family dropout. Lauren says she's doing her own thing, but you know what that means." A pause. "Drugs?" "Worse." Feelings. They both laughed. I backed away so quickly I knocked into a tray leaning against the wall. It clattered to the ground. I didn't wait to see if they heard. I just walked. Past the dance floor. Past the dessert table. Through the side door and out into the parking lot where the only witnesses were parked cars and a sagging balloon tied to a fence post. I leaned against a tree and tried not to shake. My hands wouldn't stop moving. I stuffed them into my purse, felt the crumpled paper there, a little note card I'd grabbed earlier, thinking I might write something. A toast. Something I could maybe say, if the opportunity came. If the moment felt right. I pulled it out now and stared at it. It was mostly blank. Just a few words scrawled in blue ink. We grew up sharing everything, stories, secrets, dreams. I thought that meant we'd always belong to each other. I shoved it back in my purse. A groomsman, not one of the laughing ones, a different guy, stumbled outside and spotted me. "Oh hey," he said. "You're Lauren's sister, right?" I nodded. He smiled, slow and sad. "It's cool that you're here. Like, good for you." "Thanks," I said, not sure what I was being congratulated for. "I mean," he went on, "it takes guts to show up. Some people wouldn't have, after, you know." He trailed off. I didn't ask him to finish. Instead, I smiled. "Yeah. Brave of me." He took that as an opening to sit down next to me on the bench. Close enough that I could smell the cologne on his collar, something expensive, something that didn't fit the tone. "You got anyone here with you?" he asked. "No." He nodded, like that made sense. "That's cool. You seem deep." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because if I didn't, I might start screaming. Eventually, he wandered back in, probably to find someone more available. I stayed. The sun was starting to set, casting the courtyard in that golden hour filter everyone wants in their wedding photos. It was so beautiful it almost hurt to look at. I walked back in slowly. The speeches had ended, and dinner was being cleared. I passed by Lauren's table and saw her scrolling on her phone beneath the linen, thumbs moving fast, face lit from below. I glanced over her shoulder, just for a second. She was liking comments on Instagram. "So sweet you included your sister. Family first. You're such a good role model. OMG, she came. That's amazing." And Lauren, her smile barely flickering, tapped heart after heart. It hit me like a wave, this whole day was a stage. And I wasn't even a supporting actress. I was the backdrop. The slightly out-of-focus shape in the corner of the photo, there just enough to prove a point, to complete the illusion. A performance of sisterhood. A curated act of compassion. I couldn't breathe. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just walked away. This time, I didn't say I needed air. I didn't make eye contact. I just moved. Quietly, deliberately. Back to the bathroom. Back to the only room in this entire venue where I could lock the door and not be seen. I closed the lid of the toilet, sat down fully clothed, and pulled my knees to my chest. And then, I turned off my phone. The screen went black. And for the first time all day, so did the noise. The lights dimmed just enough for the string lights to glow a little warmer. A hush spread through the room like a slow wave, rippling table by table. Then the first notes of some soft acoustic cover filled the air, and all heads turned toward the dance floor. Lauren and her new husband, Ethan, I think, stood in the center. She looked radiant in the way only brides do, her dress catching the light like it was made of something more magical than fabric. He leaned in and whispered something that made her laugh. They started to sway together, slow and perfectly timed, like they had practiced it for months. I watched from the back of the room, standing alone by the drink table. No one asked me to join the circle around them. No one turned to say, "Hey, come see." I was just there. A quiet figure blending into the scenery. As they danced, I remembered a time when Lauren and I danced like that too, not at weddings, but barefoot in the living room of our childhood home. We used to put on the cheesiest pop songs, twirl around the stained carpet, bump into the furniture and laugh until we couldn't breathe. I was always the one leading, pretending to be elegant, while Lauren fell into exaggerated dips and dramatic spins. We'd collapse into a pile of giggles and tangled hair. Back then, we weren't anything but sisters. Now, as she moved gracefully across the floor, she was something else entirely. A woman with a polished new life. A life that didn't seem to have room for me. Someone tapped my shoulder, one of the bridesmaids. "Hey, can you take a picture of us real quick?" I nodded automatically, reached for her phone, and watched as she ran to join the rest of the group. They posed in a perfect line, matching dresses, wide smiles, heads tilted just so. No one asked me to be in the picture. After I snapped a few, they thanked me like you thank a waiter, then turned back toward the dance floor. I stood there holding the phone a moment longer than necessary, watching the photo on the screen. Lauren in the center, surrounded by friends. Like she'd never had a sister at all. A cousin I hadn't seen since high school walked by and gave me a sympathetic smile. "Hey. You doing okay?" he asked, but didn't stop to hear the answer. He kept walking before I could even open my mouth. Eventually, I ended up back at my table, the kids' table, where the chairs had been slightly rearranged and the kids were now dancing in a circle nearby. My name card had been replaced with one that just said extra. Like the universe was trying to be funny. I took a sip of water, picked at the slice of wedding cake someone had left behind, and pulled out my phone. There it was. A story post from Lauren's Instagram. A perfect boomerang of the bridesmaids clinking glasses, captioned, "Couldn't have done this without my girls #found family." Found family. The phrase clanged in my chest like a dropped bell. I kept scrolling. Post after post, group photo after group photo. Lauren tagging everyone, even distant coworkers, with loving captions and inside jokes. I wasn't in any of them. Not even the background. I opened the group chat we used to have, Bennett's Sisters plus Mom, the one that went silent months ago. It was gone. Not archived. Deleted. I opened my DMs and saw a message request. It was from another cousin, someone I barely talked to. Just a screenshot. A group chat I wasn't in. I just hope she doesn't make it all about her. Lauren deserves one drama-free day. Ugh, agreed. She always finds a way to be the victim. I think it's so sweet that Lauren still invited her after everything. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Until my throat tightened. That was the version of the story they were telling. Not that I showed up alone, underdressed, and ignored. But that I was the ticking bomb in the corner, waiting to ruin something beautiful. I closed the messages and put the phone face down on the table. I felt like I was shrinking. Not in the poetic, spiritual sense. Physically. My shoulders curled inward. My knees tucked up. I wanted to disappear into the folds of my own body. If I could have melted into the carpet, I would have done it with relief. I slipped out the side door again, the cool evening air meeting me like a long-lost friend. The music was muffled through the walls now, just bass and cheer and everything I wasn't part of. That's when I saw him, a man in a white apron, sitting on a low wall near the back entrance, smoking a cigarette and staring at the stars. "You okay?" he asked, like he actually meant it. I paused. Do I look okay? He gave a small, sympathetic laugh. Not especially. I sat down a few feet from him, tucking my dress under my legs. We sat in silence for a while. It felt nice, the kind of quiet that doesn't ask you to perform. You part of the wedding? He asked. Not really. He nodded, took another drag. That's the trick with these things. Big smiles. Bigger lies. I looked at him. He didn't look like someone who judged easily. His face was sun-worn, lined in a kind way. The kind of guy who's seen too many behind-the-scenes moments to be fooled by any of it. He didn't ask me to explain. Didn't ask me what I did or where I lived or what went wrong. He just sat there. And I realized this stranger, who didn't know my name, had shown me more kindness than almost anyone inside. Eventually, he stood and stubbed out the cigarette. You want a glass of water or something? I smiled weakly. No, but thanks. All right, he said. You take care, okay? I nodded. When he was gone, I stayed seated, watching a couple slow dancing on the lawn. They were probably drunk. Probably strangers. But the way they held each other felt real. Messy and imperfect and real. I took my phone out again, not to post, not to scroll, just to open the Notes app. And I wrote. What if I stopped asking people to see me, and started seeing myself? It wasn't much. Just a sentence. But it felt like something solid. Something I could hold on to. Maybe I didn't need to be in the picture. Maybe I just needed to stop standing in the background waiting for an invitation. I looked back at the venue, the glowing windows, the silhouettes laughing inside. And I asked myself, quietly, seriously, why did I come here? And do I still need them to love me, to believe I'm worth something? I didn't have the answer yet. But for the first time all night, I felt the question land like a step in the right direction. I didn't go back inside right away. The wind had picked up a little, tugging at the loose pieces of my hair, sending the occasional leaf tumbling across the stone walkway. From where I sat, I could hear the music inside, muffled now, but still upbeat. Like nothing had ever cracked beneath the surface. I checked my phone, not to scroll, but to read the messages again. The ones I wasn't supposed to see. The ones that carved the truth into me more cleanly than Lauren's voice behind that door ever could. I scrolled through them slowly, letting each sentence settle in. Then I took a screenshot. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was for proof. Or maybe it was just because something inside me had shifted, like I'd finally stopped begging to be seen and had started choosing to be. That's when I heard the click of heels behind me. Hey, Lauren said, like we were old friends sharing a moment under the stars. I was looking for you. I didn't stand up. I just looked at her. She was still glowing, still picture perfect, hair perfectly curled, makeup still intact, smile warm enough to boil something. Are you okay? She asked, soft and careful, like she already knew the answer and was trying to manage the fallout. I heard what you said, I replied, my voice low. Steady. Her smile faltered, just slightly. What do you mean? In the dressing room. You and your friends. You said I had to be invited or the internet would think you were heartless. She blinked. A tiny pause. Then a laugh, light and dismissive. Oh, Julia. You always take things the wrong way. I didn't flinch. You called me barely family, I said. You said I make everything about me. Her expression flattened. I didn't mean it like that. God, you're so sensitive. I am, I agreed. But that doesn't make me wrong. She folded her arms. Why are you doing this now? Can we not make my wedding about your feelings? There it was. The version of me they liked to hold on to, the unstable one, the dramatic one, the storm everyone tiptoed around. The girl who made things harder just by existing. I'm not doing anything, I said. I showed up. That's all I did. Lauren looked at me for a long moment, like she was waiting for me to crack. To cry. To beg. I didn't. Instead, I pulled out my phone. I opened the screenshot. Held it out. You might want to tell your bridesmaids not to gossip in group chats they don't realize are being shared. Her eyes scanned the messages. I watched it happen, the calculation behind her face, the subtle twitch in her jaw, the brief flicker of panic before the expressionless mask returned. I didn't say those things, she said, quiet now. That wasn't me. But it could have been, I said. That's the problem. She didn't answer. I slipped my phone back into my purse. You don't have to like me, I continued. You don't even have to love me. But you don't get to rewrite me. I'm not. You are, I cut in, still calm. And I'm tired of trying to be palatable just so I'm allowed to exist near you. She looked away, her mouth tight. There were so many things I could have said. About how she used to hug me during nightmares. About how she held my hand the day Dad moved out. About how we used to pretend we were witches, casting spells in the backyard with sticks and dandelions. But I didn't say any of that. I just stood up. I'm leaving. What? Now? I nodded. This doesn't feel like family. It feels like PR. Her arms dropped to her sides. You always do this. No, I said, looking her straight in the eye. I always let you do this. I turned before she could reply. Inside, the party carried on. Plates clinked. People danced. Someone laughed too loud. I moved through the room like a ghost again, but this time, not because I was invisible. Because I was leaving on purpose. I found my purse. My jacket. My dignity. On the way out, someone stopped me, a girl I didn't recognize. Young, probably a +1. She leaned in and said, "Hey, I saw that screenshot earlier." That was really brave. I didn't know what to say. So I just nodded. As I reached the doors, I looked back one last time. Lauren was at her table, phone still in her hand, not smiling anymore. The room felt different. Not better. Not worse. Just like something had shifted. I stepped outside. The air was cool, a little damp from the lake nearby. I rolled my suitcase behind me, its wheels whispering across the stone path. I didn't cry. I didn't post anything dramatic. I just kept walking, letting the music fade behind me like a song I used to know by heart but couldn't stand to hear anymore. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was walking toward something, not away. The Uber driver didn't ask why I was leaving with a suitcase before the reception had even ended. He just took my bag, loaded it gently into the trunk, and asked if I wanted music. I said no. We rode in silence most of the way. The city blurred by, soft lights, sleepy streets, the occasional pedestrian headed somewhere with more purpose than I felt. I watched it all like a passenger in someone else's movie. He dropped me off at the airport, but I didn't go inside. Not yet. There was a 24-hour diner across the street, the kind with flickering neon signs, scratched booths, and coffee that tasted faintly like burnt hope. I'd been there before. Years ago. Lauren and I used to come here late at night after movies, when she still wore hoodies and I still believed we were going to grow old side by side. I crossed the street and stepped inside. The bell above the door gave a soft jingle. The place looked exactly the same. The same tired waitress behind the counter. The same laminated menus with syrup stains. I slid into a booth by the window, dropped my bag beside me, and exhaled so deeply I felt it in my ribs. The waitress brought me a glass of water without asking. I ordered a slice of pie. Cherry. Warm, if possible. I didn't check my phone. I didn't scroll through photos or texts. I just sat there, hands folded in front of me, watching my reflection in the window. She looked different. Not happier. Not fixed. But clearer somehow. Like someone who had finally stopped trying to hold together something that had already let go of her. I reached into my purse and pulled out the note card. The toast I never gave. The one I thought I might whisper if the moment felt right, if the air softened, if Lauren remembered the years when we were everything to each other. It was still crumpled. The ink a little smudged. But the words were there. We grew up in the same house, but we carried different things. You carried the expectations. I carried the silence. I always hoped one day we'd meet in the middle, not as versions of who they wanted us to be, but as ourselves. Whole. Flawed. Seen. I came here not for a seat at your table, but for a glimpse of who we used to be. I think I found her. Not in you. In me. I folded the card in half. Then again. Then once more. I didn't tear it. I didn't throw it away. I just placed it in the corner of the table like a receipt for something I no longer needed. The waitress brought my pie. Steam curled up into the fluorescent light. I picked up the fork. Took a bite. It was sweet and a little tart, like something honest. After a moment, I pulled out my phone. I switched the camera to front-facing. Smiled. Not wide. Not performative. Just, honestly. A soft smile, the kind you don't give to other people. The kind that belongs only to you. I took the photo. Then I posted it. No filters. No hashtags. Just a caption. Some tables aren't worth sitting at. I didn't check who liked it. I didn't care. Outside, the first light of morning had started to bloom. Soft and gold and full of mercy. I paid for the pie. Left a generous tip. Rolled my suitcase behind me as I walked out of the diner and into the quiet of the early day. There was no soundtrack. No applause. No dramatic send-off. Just me. Just air. And the gentle certainty that I didn't need to be understood to be whole. Some people will always prefer the version of you that makes their world easier to explain. That's okay. You don't have to fit into a story that never made room for your truth. Sometimes the seat we've been fighting for doesn't belong to us, not because we're unworthy, but because we were never meant to sit at someone else's table to begin with. And that's not a tragedy. That's freedom. I walked forward, toward the terminal, toward whatever came next. Not needing anything I left behind. And not afraid, finally, to walk alone.